Hey girlies, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jennifer and this is a ready to wear affair where I discuss all things fashion, mostly a luxury and designer fashion because that's where my true passion lies. But of course, as a lover of fashion, I love all price points of fashion. So that's fast fashion, high street fashion, affordable fashion, contemporary fashion, you name it. So if that sounds your vibe, please go ahead and subscribe because it's gonna be a good video. This video, part 2, is going to be calling out and really focusing on the OG fashion influencers, the OG, honestly, fashion icons for the earlier part of like the 2010s, right? We're going back in time. We're going back at least a decade or so. The next influencer, OG influencer I want to cover is Shiona Turini. Shiona Turini is predominantly a stylist now. She's best well known as one of Beyonce's main stylists. She styled a lot of the looks for the Renaissance store, I believe, and some looks as well for the Cowboy Carter that just wrapped up last year. So Shiona Turini was one of my favorites. I would follow her Instagram feed so relentlessly. She didn't have a vlog or a blog channel, or she was on YouTube. She was just very much active on Instagram, and her uniform that I honestly took inspo from was her crop top and bottom uniform. So she typically wore a crop top and some sort of longer bottom. So it's like a mini or maxi skirt or a full pants, pencil skirt, nothing too short, nothing as short as the crop top she had, but that was like her style combo and I love it. And I till this day think that's one of my style pillars, that combo of crop top and, you know, a bigger bottom, or more full or not so cropped bottom, and I think it just works very well on most, honestly, every body type and size. So that's what I credit Shiona Turini with, and she is someone who I think wore color. She wasn't afraid to play with color, much like Kalana. I didn't mention that Kalana was someone who loved playing with color. She still does. Knows how to put it all together. She knows how to style the celebs. Again, like I said, Beyonce. She is really good at pairing a casual top with a not so casual bottom. I feel like she wore great pencil skirts that were very appropriate for work, but the crop tops weren't, but she would put a blazer on top of it so you can kind of close it and then you'd still be good for work. Just don't open up the blazer so they won't see your crop top or your, like, you know, bralette. She does the bandeau or whatever, this situation. She wore a lot of those. Like, that was very much a lot of her personal style formula, and I loved it. And she also wore like the best brands. She wore a lot of Dior. Dior was one of her favorite brands. I think she may have said in some post that Dior was her favorite brand. I loved her Dior bags. I always remember she had a Diorama bag, which is now discontinued, but she had one and made me really consider getting one. I don't know how. I didn't, because I just couldn't make it work. Like, it didn't exist for me then. She was a huge Dior fan. She had this Dior jacket that I ended up getting, but it was too small for me. And that was the best jacket I had ever seen. Till this day, I think the jacket is one of the best jackets ever. And it was like this Dior jacket that you can take apart. It was a jacket that you can make cropped. So it was a full kind of like knee-length jacket with like a full skirt, a detachable full A-line skirt that was like flared out. And it was like attached to this crop bomber piece and had like an army green, army green, military green, dark shade of green. And the inside was lined in like an orange color lining, all nylon. Gorgeous jacket, just such a gorgeous coat, and like it fit her so well. And like I remember being so obsessed with finding that jacket. And the only one I found on eBay was a size, honestly at this point, 2-3 sizes too small. So yeah, that's Shiona. Shiona is from Bermuda. She's Bermuda based. I forgot to mention Kalana I think she lives in LA now. She definitely lives in LA. But I'm forgetting where she's from. I know her husband's from New York, her husband's from Brooklyn, and they met in Brooklyn. I just don't remember if she's from Brooklyn. She might not be. Shiona she's Bermuda born, and she talks so warmly about her home country of Bermuda, which I visited once, and I get why she talks about Bermuda so fondly. Bermuda's a vibe, and it's beautiful. Like some of the best snorkeling that I've ever seen. And I haven't gone that many places, but no place I've been, no tropical place I've been has topped snorkeling in Bermuda, just saying. So anyway, that's Shiona. Shiona Turini is an acclaimed Bermudan consultant, celebrity stylist, and Emmy award-winning costume designer. Love that for her. congrats, girl. She was a fashion director at Cosmopolitan, which is dope. And that explains her presence at Fashion Week shows, at front row seats. She was at Teen Vogue, W Magazine, and then launching CR Fashion Book alongside Karine Roitfield. And yeah, she works with like Dior, Nike, Ferragamo, Stuart Weitzman. So love Shiona. She's super dope and definitely one of my OG style icons. The next icon I want to cover is, okay. You guys are gonna have to help me with this one. I don't think I've heard her say her name, so I know I'm gonna butcher it, but bear with me. If she ever sees this video, please forgive me. So this next style icon is, I believe, Oumayma Elboumeshouli. She is a newer, I pulled her into this roster of OG fashionistas. I didn't follow her until I would say like 2019, so like towards the tail end of that fashion icon OG era. And I think she might be a little younger than a lot of the girlies I have just mentioned on this list, but she is that girl. She wears not too much affordable fashion, unfortunately, but she knows how to style. She's the creative director at Harper's Bazaar Arabia. So I knew she had a creative director role at a fashion magazine. So that's her current role. I'm just looking at an article from May 2026, so pretty decent. And she's just, wow. Her style is impeccable. She wears a lot of high, like I said, not too much low, but the way she combines the different pieces, just impeccable. I want to say, I would equate her style to, I don't know if she's really similar to any of the girlies I've mentioned already. Maybe Christine Centenera, but even more maximalist, because Christine has a more minimalist vibe to her aesthetic. She's a little more minimal. Oumayma, I think, pushes the envelope a little more. She works with a lot more different silhouettes and structures and shapes and lots of layers, just lots of accessories. Textures, ruffles, she mixes everything, volumes, like she really pushes the envelope and just goes there. She dresses like a curated photo shoot for an editorial spread in a magazine. And I absolutely love that. It says Saint Laurent, Kate, Brunello Cucinelli, Ferragamo, Alaïa, Prada, Dior, of course, Valentino, all the brands, literally all the brands. She wears all the brands. Dark Park. So she does also dabble in some streetwear too. Yeah, I would say her vibe is very much a mixture of streetwear and high-end designer luxury wear. Margiela, Louis Vuitton, of course. She does sponsored collaborations with them as well. Mentioned Bulgari. And then she also wears a lot of like Arabian or Middle Eastern brands as well, which I love. Like she has like, I don't know, over 300,000 subscribers or followers on Instagram. She uses her platform to showcase some of these lesser known brands. And I love when people with platforms do that, because that's how you put people on. That's how you make brands grow or help brands grow. And she's, no stranger to really putting on the brands for her audience. So love Oumayma. I hope I'm saying her name right, but definitely follow her Instagram feed. She doesn't have a YouTube channel or anything else, just the Instagram. But her Instagram alone it'll give you life. You can just scroll for days and be just in awe of everything she curates. All right, the next OG fashionista that I'd like to shout out is Fisayo Longe. Fisayo Longe is the owner and founder of Kai Collective. That is her brand. She's been at the brand for I think 10 years, but I think the brand really kicked off maybe a handful of years ago. She is all about bold color. She's all about mixing high and low, and that is who I used to follow. I still follow that girl from the blogger days. She had a blog and I loved her style. I still do. And I love that her style hasn't changed. So many of these girlies, their styles haven't changed. If she's a maximalist, she's a maximalist. If she's a minimalist, she's a minimalist. A lot of these girlies have stayed true to their style over the years, and I absolutely love that. It just shows that style is so much also entwined with your personality too, right? I think the personalities have not changed, and therefore that's reflected in their style, right? Fisayo Longe is a visionary as well. Her brand has been successful. She's very open about the journey of entrepreneurship and brand ownership. Definitely check both her personal Instagram and her Kai Collective page, her brand page. I love her transparency about her journey. I loved how honest and how helpful. She gives a lot of great and helpful tips to everyone who follows her, even those who maybe aren't necessarily interested in opening their own brand, but just so you know, like what it's like to own a brand, what it's like to maintain a following, maintain customers, all that stuff. So definitely follow her for her the latest drops on Kai Collective and other tips. She's super active, and she's had like really cool interviews with like Vogue. I think they like interviewed her closet. They did one of those, or is it Marie Claire? I think Marie Claire did like I forgot what the series is called, but they go to like, you know, celebrity or influencers' houses and like go through some top memorable pieces in their wardrobe. They did hers, and I loved her episode. Anyway, that's Fisayo, and Fisayo is someone who also mixes high and low. She has an eclectic sense of style, like so much color, bold prints, mixing prints, which is like so hard to do, but she does it so well. Her life is equally bold and colorful. Like she loves to live life and love out loud, and she just embodies that so well. And I enjoy watching her feed, and have enjoyed following her for the past, it seems like almost 10 years. And her brand reflects her own personal style, right? She's over here mixing like bejeweled shoes with, you know, bold print tops and, you know, an oversized pair of baggy jeans. Like that is her silhouette. She has some really cool, unique pieces in her wardrobe, her bag. She has that eye for like unique pieces that are conversation starters. She has an eye for that. Pieces like her accessories are usually memorable. She has some of these top it girl designer pieces from this 2010 era I'm focusing on. You know, she has those, you know, Prada shoes, right? Like the Prada flame shoes. She has the D&G cage heel, bird heel, you know, sandals, platform sandals. She has those her collection of collector's items when it comes to fashion and luxury designer fashion, unmatched. Her and Piper, I forget her last name, but Cassie recently interviewed her and did a closet tour of her archive pieces. They have some of the best archive pieces. I love Fisayo. She's so bold with her fashion. She's not afraid to take risks, and she pulls it off effortlessly, seamlessly, and makes everyone around her just I feel like her fashion reflects her personality and her aura, and it's just so bright and happy and warm and inviting and exciting and fun. It's eccentric in the most enjoyable way. I absolutely love Fisayo. I feel like she makes you feel like you know her. I've never met this woman, and like because of her personality and the fact that she like lives out loud on social media, like she makes you feel like you know her. Like she's just such a welcoming person, from what I can tell online, of course. So I love Fisayo. I love her style. She inspires me to really go there and push the envelope. And I think it's important to have people like that in your style icon roster. That's Fisayo. Next person on my list is Shala Monroque. So Shala Monroque is one of my tenets of like fashion iconism. Like she is someone who is no longer really in the fashion scene from what I can tell. She's kind of like, she's moved out of the US. She's St. Lucian born, so she was born in St. Lucia and then lived and worked here in the US for quite a few years, had a very successful career in fashion. I think she like dated Larry Gagosian, the Gagosian gallery guy. She dated him for some time too. So he's, you know, obviously a very prominent guy. And she was just that girl. She was that girl. Like she also loved playing with bold colors, you know, bright prints. And she had a very elevated, you know, more reserved style. Like everything she wore was like well, not everything, but a good chunk of what she wore, you could probably wear to work, you could probably wear to church, because she wore elegance in a way that wasn't, you know, risque, very respectable, but at the same time not boring, at the same time very much someone who enjoyed playing in fashion, who enjoyed standing out, who enjoyed wearing things that started conversation starter pieces. She was very much in the know and very much at Fashion Week. She served as editor at large for Pop magazine, and then I remember this part, she was the creative director at Garage magazine from 2011 to 2014. So again, that 2010s era I was talking about, she was on the scene, like she was at Fashion Week. She was also heavily photographed. I found so many photos of her on Pinterest, and she, you know, she was that girl. She wore Prada. She was Prada girl to me. She wore a lot of Prada, a lot of Dior. She wore Parenza Schuler. Oh, she put me onto Parenza. 3.1 Philip Lim. She wore 3.1 Philip Lim. She wore, I'm just trying to think of what other brands that she wore. And she wore like really collective stuff from like the Pradas and the Diors. Like she wore some really, she wore McQueen. She wore Valentino, Miu Miu. She wore a lot of Miu Miu. And I guess she was also considered a longtime muse and an unofficial ambassador for Prada and Miu Miu, which makes so much sense, right? Which is why I saw her wear so much of those two brands during that time period, during the 2010s. She wore Rodarte, she wore Jason Wu, she wore Hermes, she wore Chloe, she wore vintage Dolce & Gabbana, Saint Laurent, Balenciaga. But yeah, so that was Shala, and like, again, I felt like she was that it girl that didn't command too much attention, but her clothes spoke for her. Like when she walked into the room, I mean, I'm saying this like I've witnessed her, I never have, but like from what I can tell from like the pictures, she was like an it girl. Like she was in all the cool fashion parties, she was photographed heavily, she wore all the latest Miu Miu Prada, she was at front row at all the fashion shows during Fashion Month. And, you know, she had a very prominent, she was in a very high profile relationship. And then she just kind of like went off the map. Maybe like 2017, I just saw less and less of her. And then I heard that she like fully moved back to St. Lucia, and then she actually kind of seemed to embody what seems to be like more of a Rasta lifestyle. So very different from the fashion life. But I always remember Shala during that era. And I would look out for her. I would look for, oh, where's that beautiful dark skin St. Lucian girl, Shala? Like I would literally always see I was always looking out for what she was gonna wear, who she was gonna wear. Like she was someone who I felt like if you knew, you knew. Again, not one of those more prominent it girls like the Chloe Sevigny's, and I do love Chloe Sevigny. I love Chloe Sevigny. I think she styles herself, right? I think she does, because like she's just, I don't know, maybe she doesn't, maybe she has a stylist, but I think she styles herself, but she's definitely someone who has impeccable fashion. Her, Alexa Chung, and then last but not least, I'm gonna cover Nini Nguyen. Close things off with Nini Nguyen. Nini Nguyen is very famously known as one of Rihanna's stylists. So obviously people like Rihanna, Beyonce, they have like teams of stylists, but I feel like there's always like top three, top five. And I want to say that Nini is Rihanna's top 5, and they're really good friends. I've seen like on Instagram, Nini's Instagram feed, that Rihanna has come to her baby's birthday parties, and Nini has held Rihanna's baby, and vice versa. Rihanna's held Nini's babies. Nini has 2 babies, I believe, 2 girls. And her husband, I believe, is a photographer. Love Nini so much. Nini put me onto a lot of brands. She also put me onto Esteban Cortázar. There was a shirt that I saw her wear on her website. This Esteban Cortázar shirt that she had that I was on a hunt for so bad. And I eventually found it. The version I found was on the Real. And it's a slightly different version of the one she had. The one she had a higher collar, higher like neck collar, and higher like wrist collar. Is that what you call it? Like cuff. higher cuff sleeve. Like the cuff section was super exaggerated, which I loved. The version I found on the Real, it was like a little shorter. Same with the neck cuff or collar. And I remember just being obsessed with her style. She wore a lot of Alaïa. She wore a lot of vintage stuff. Oh, there's this vintage Chanel skirt that she wore, this look. I'm gonna try and find it. Hopefully I could find her blogger pictures. But I remember this beautiful Chanel pencil mini skirt with buttons on the front. I think it was velvet, and I think it was navy blue. I need to find something like that for myself. I need to find it. I know it was vintage. She wears so much vintage. And then she also wore this other, I think it's called something vintage. And she had a lot of dresses, and it was kind of like slip dress vibes, lace with lace detailing. But that was like a brand that she wore a lot of. But other than that, she wore Esteban Corrazar, she wore Alaïa, she wore vintage, a lot of vintage pieces, a lot of vintage Chanel. She wore Gucci, she wore Dior, she wore a lot of Ellery, I remember. She wore Tom Ford, she wore, like I said, so much vintage. Like she, out of everyone in this OG lineup video I'm doing, she was Miss Vintage. She wore the most vintage, one of the most vintage, highest vintage wearing, most active vintage wearing stylist or, you know, fashion influencer that I could remember, and like during that era. So she wore, like I said, Alaïa, she wore Comme des Garçons, she wore Celine, Saint Laurent, Margiela, Hermes. So lots of brands from like, you know, the luxury street, but also I remember her mixing with some affordable fashion too, and brands like Zara. She definitely wore Zara, and some there's a brand that I can mention that she wore quite a bit of. But I loved her vintage styling. She probably was someone who I looked to the most for like vintage inspiration. She's very much someone who is a vintage shopper, really styles so much of her looks with vintage pieces. She makes sure to incorporate a heavy amount of vintage items in her looks, and so much of her inspiration is drawn from the vintage market. So love Nini for that, and of course I love her because she is my favorite fashion icon when it comes to celebrities, Rihanna's stylist. So that's mostly what she's known for, and we see why. Like I see so much of Nini's style reflected in Rihanna's style, right? That kind of grungy streetwear, you know, off the shoulder, oversized, baggy, but still somehow snatching you kind of vibe. That's very much Nini's style as well. So yeah. But that's everything. I only covered 10 of my favorite OG fashionistas, fashion stylists, fashion bloggers, fashion influencers, fashionistas in general. I've only covered 10 of them, but I think there's more. I have to like unearth some of the ones that came to mind as I was going through this video and do a part 2. But that's, again, probably my top 10 that has come to memory that I can think of right now. And if I can think of the rest, I'll do a part 2. But let me know if any of these girlies are familiar to you, if you, like me, followed them during the early 2000s when they were out there like starting blogger accounts and attending fashion shows. Let me know if any of these girlies were ones you also follow, that they're familiar to you too. I know for me, they were people who I looked up to, and I very much consider them as huge influences in my personal style then and up until today. So thank you, girlies, as always, so much for watching. Please stay safe, please stay blessed, please stay respectful, and I will see you, girlies, in the next video. Bye.